Now we're getting to the crux of why we called it "Don't Know" the gaps, because we asked you question after question after question, and all we got was "Don't know."
No, there are plenty of things.
And we don't mind. Listen to me. We don't mind your Phil. We don't mind your "don't knows." But if you don't know, you can't say we're wrong because you don't know.
Right. Hang on. Now, you want to say you know the cause, right? You want to say God did it.
No, I didn't.
Okay. Are you not telling me God did it?
I didn't say that.
Well, what are you saying about the cause of the universe?
The cause of the universe has to be supernatural.
I don't think that you've presented anything, for me personally, that counters that concept.
Why not?
And I'll tell you why.
And so what I'm saying to you is, I believe that the Quran is from a supernatural source,
right?
And I believe that the cause of the universe is supernatural.
Okay.
Yeah? You can't say it's not supernatural because you don't know.
Okay.
And we're happy with that. You're saying don't know to that. That's what I believe. Well, so
we should say, don't you agree that we should say we don't know?
So what I'm saying is,
we don't know.
So what I'm saying is, yeah, but you're not being, I don't believe you're being genuine with regards to that.
Okay, go ahead.
And I'll tell you why. When you don't have a natural explanation, science says it doesn't know.
Right.
Which is fine.
Right.
Because they're only looking for a natural explanation.
But it's no, I disagree.
You can disagree as you like. But what I'm saying to you is this, that's true.
Right, okay.
So, do you disagree that science rejects the existence of the supernatural?
I disagree with that.
Do you?
Yeah.
I thought that was its premise.
A lot of people think that, but I disagree.
So are you saying naturalism is not the premise of science?
Yes, I am saying that.
Okay.
The reason I'm saying
which prominent scientists agree with this? Just so I know.
Okay. Well, okay, so I'll give you an example of a study that was done.
No, I didn't ask that. I was under the impression, from what I've read and researched, that the premise of science is naturalism. Therefore, everything requires a natural explanation.
Right.
That's why they say evolution is a theory, because it's the best explanation we can come up, which is natural.
No, I think I disagree. So I
you
think
can disagree if you like.
Okay,
so as you disagree, what I'm saying to you is this. So you're saying I'm wrong, believing the premise of science is naturalism. So which scientists, just so I can understand, because look, I'm not here to win contests here, and I'm sorry you got upset with the title. For me, it was apt, is where it is. But I just want to know who agrees with what you're saying.
Okay. So let me try and respond. Okay. So there is a study done on whether prayer works. Okay. It was commissioned by I think it was Templeton Foundation, I'm not sure, but it was a very large study, and what they did was they divided people up into groups. Some were prayed for, some weren't prayed for, and they looked to see did the people who were prayed for perform better than not. Okay, so there's no assumption in analysing that data that supernatural doesn't exist. They just want to see what does the evidence say. Does it support the supernatural claim here or not? So therefore, I would disagree that science necessarily has to remove.
So I'll say it again to you. Which scientists?
Well, the authors of that study.
No. Who?
Well, all right, look them up for me.
No, it's important because I've never heard this before.
Okay, I'll look up the study for you.
Let's just do this.
Okay, I'll look up the study for you.
And let me just get my support. Find the doctor for me. You can this guy help as well, because he's an atheist as well?
Sure.
Go on. What's the script? What's going on?
Okay, so do a large study on. There you go. It's got 383 citations, so it's reasonably well studied. Page is unfound. Sorry. Look at Wikipedia page. Studies on intercessory prayer. There's plenty of studies on that. Right? You can go on the Wikipedia page.
Right. So basically, what we're saying is this: Phil here, he was upset that he was upset.
Good. Hey, how you doing?
He was upset when we called the video.
He's already upset. I just think
he took exception to the term "don't know of the gaps" that we put on his video. So what I said was, according to what I understand, the premise of science is naturalism. Yeah, that everything has a natural explanation. And for me, they don't know what they come up with is because they don't know a natural explanation. and rather allow a supernatural explanation, they completely dismiss it. So in my from the way I looked at it, if you don't know of a natural explanation and you exclude any supernatural explanation, that means you're just using don't know instead of allowing a supernatural explanation. So that's what I was explaining why we did that title. So now what Phil's saying is that science doesn't have naturalism as its premise. Now I read a book, The Philosophy of Science, and it says it does.
People disagree on this.
All right.
Right? People disagree on
right,
this,
go on.
right? If you look, even study philosophers, right? There was the largest study I know of philosophers was the Phil Paper Survey, and they asked philosophers what was their opinion on various controversial things. Okay, so one of them was scientific realism. Most philosophers agreed with scientific realism. Another one was God or atheism, and about 76% of those philosophers lean towards atheism, right? But much less, I can't remember the exact number, I think it's like 50% said they were naturalists. So you've got like a quarter of those philosophers who said they're atheists but weren't naturalists.
Do you believe in the supernatural?
One of the problems of saying it has to assume naturalism, and there's discussion on this in the philosophical literature, it's actually difficult to define what naturalism is.
Do you believe in the supernatural?
Okay, no, I don't.
Why not?
Well, I haven't seen any convincing evidence for the supernatural.
Okay, but what evidence would you, what measuring tool would you use for the supernatural?
Well, again, this is a difficult thing. Like, one of the problems of talking about naturalism and saying this is the essence of science is actually defining what you mean by naturalism.
Could the cause of the universe be supernatural?
Right. Well, hang on. That it is not helping us, is it? We're trying to say how do we? There's a difficult problem of how to actually define what is natural and what is not natural. Okay, and there's a difficult, very difficult problem there, and that may be why many philosophers that say they're atheists don't say they're naturalists.
Right.
Okay, because there's a difficulty in defining what naturalism is. I'll give you just to unpack that a little bit. Let's suppose we're talking about, let's not talk about God for the moment. Let's say ghosts, right? So generally ghosts are considered supernatural. Okay, they don't conform to the laws of physics. Okay, but now let's suppose, and also people think that evidence for ghosts is pretty shoddy. Okay, it's all anecdotes and crappy pictures and so on. Right? Let's suppose.
Sorry,
okay,
can we face the camera?
So let's suppose we found that there was very good evidence for ghosts, and let's suppose we found some explanation for them. Then you might say, well, now they're natural, right? So what does it mean to say that something is natural or not natural? It's actually a much more difficult definitional problem.
Okay.
That's why I don't say science is all about natural.
All right. So
what I think science is about a combination of theoretical and observational testing of ideas.
Right.
That's, to me, the key to science. It's not really about naturalism. In fact, you look at scientific papers, they will almost never mention naturalism. They'll say, here's the test we did, here's the experiments we did, here's the theory, here's why we think it's consistent and all of it. And that, if you look at scientific papers, that is really what it's about.
Phil, you said you don't believe in the supernatural.
I don't know of anything that's claimed.
No, you didn't say that. I asked you, do you believe in the supernatural?
Okay.
You said no.
All right, fine.
How do you
as I said, there's a difficulty there in defining what is supernatural.
How do you define it?
Very difficult.
You've rejected it, so you must have an idea.
I mean, as I say, it's a difficulty in really defining what is natural and supernatural. There are certain things that are claimed to be supernatural. So we can have a set of things like ghosts, like God, like ESP,
I'm asking you.
and all those things that have been claimed, right, that are, as we understand them, not conforming to laws of physics. Those claims, I have not seen sufficient evidence.
Now, what do you understand the supernatural to be?
Okay, so things that, let's say, are not consistent with the laws of physics.
So you're saying things that can't...
But there's a difficulty, because suppose we found that these things did exist, then we might have to say, well, we might...
No, but right now.
Okay, fine.
So right now you're saying you reject the existence of things that don't conform to the laws of physics.
Well, I only reject things where the evidence is not sufficient to give belief. I'm really saying belief should be based on evidence. Okay? So where you have a little bit of evidence, you have a little bit of belief. When you have a bit more evidence, you have a bit more belief. When you have overwhelming evidence, you have confident belief.
I think belief is based on reason, probably the same thing, but carry on.
Okay.
I think one of the things now from our last conversation that was an issue was just getting a consistent worldview for me. That was my feeling. Sure. Because whenever a scenario was presented, you could think of a counter scenario or a counter theory that even analogy to say that it wasn't valid. So we're finding a similar thing now. I don't speak quite low. So now what I'm finding is, even in the term of the underpinning principles that science or the scientific method assumes, so there are some presumptions within science. And I could be wrong about this, you can tell me about it. But one of those assumptions is there aren't any non-natural explanations. However you define naturalism. So that's a fundamental sort of underlying, and then that leads on to sort of whether you're a hard naturalist or
I disagree with that.
Sure. So for us, so we understand, what is your position on what is natural and what isn't? What underpins science?
I mean, as I say, what I think underpins science is not an assumption about naturalism. And the example I gave was that people do study the effectiveness of prayer, and that is a perfectly legitimate scientific study. Right? If we found that only the prayers of Sunni Muslims had effects, and let's suppose we divided the group up of people, we said, look, there's a whole bunch of people in a council board, okay, we're going to ask Sunni Muslims to pray, we're going to ask Shia Muslims to pray, we're going to ask Catholics to pray, Jews to pray, Hindus to pray, okay, and we do experiments like that, and we find that it turns out that only Sunni Muslims, their prayers work, and nobody else's prayers ever have any effect. To me, that would be doing science, because what science is really about is not excluding the...
So then you would believe in the supernatural?
Right. It is about evidence, doing studies, looking at consistency of theory, right? And so to me, it's not... I know a lot of people say it is about naturalism, right? But I personally don't agree, and there are other people that don't agree. And in fact, as I say, you look at philosophers, much less believe in naturalism than believe in scientific realism or believe in atheism. Okay? And there's a reason for that.
I mean, as someone I understand why there's an issue with just taking naturalism by itself. Yeah. So I think it's a very difficult position to be in, which is why only a small...
I agree it's typical, but it's not necessary.
Sure. But we're getting back into that realm of finding a caveat. And I not disrespect men. I always feel that maybe you're coming up with a caveat to...
Do the disclaimer.
So in that scenario that you gave of the prayer experiment, what explanation would you find, or what theory would you put forward to explain the observation that you theorise?
Okay, so if you think of it in sort of, well, you put forward theories. I mean, one obvious theory is that the claims of that particular religion are true, right? And that to me would be evidence that would support that theory. Of course, in science we don't necessarily say yes or no. We have Bayesian probabilities and things like that.
Brothers, just move across a little bit, just so this brother can fit in.
So you raise your confidence. You raise your confidence in a proposition based on the evidence for the proposition. So, I do think that if the prayers of only one religion work, so that's something we could study scientifically. So it's not excluding the supernatural, and it would provide some evidence to support that supernatural claim.
Okay. So would you then? So what would because the whole thing about doing observations is that usually there's some pre-theory. You have an idea of understanding how atoms and molecules interact, that if I heated metals they would expand, then you carry out observations with a null theory, the opposite, and then you prove yourself wrong. So if you had the null theory that prayers don't work, and then you did your experiment, prayers don't work.
What doesn't work?
Prayers.
Yeah.
And then you did the experiment, and you got the results.
Step back a bit. Okay. Because your man here doesn't want to move from the camera.
Okay.
Bit more. That's it, beautiful.
Thank you. On a wide-angle lens,
It's just that he stood in the way and he won't move.
He didn't know. So
no, you get confusion.
Okay, so if in that experiment you got the result that you talked about, where a particular group of religious people's prayers had an effect, what theory would you put forward for that?
Well, of course.
How is that happening?
One theory might be that religion is true.
But what would that entail for you? I mean,
I think that would be evidence that theory is true.
That there is. What is the theory?
that religious belief is correct.
So are you saying that science can contemplate as an explanation supernatural or non-physical mechanisms of action?
I think it could, yeah.
You could do that?
Yeah.
So science is a valid tool, you're saying, to measure supernatural?
It could be. It could be.
In that specific scenario?
In that case, people have done it. These are not hypothetical experiments. These have been done.
Yeah.
Right? Unfortunately, the results came out. It doesn't do anything.
Sure.
Right? But had it come out that they worked, okay, and it worked only for one religion. I mean, if it just worked in general, it might be a placebo effect. So I don't think you would. You're always trying to rule out alternative explanations. That's part of the scientific hypothesis.
I believe
right?
if any supernatural phenomenon occurred, you would just fish for a natural explanation.
Yeah. You're always looking for it. It's part of the scientific process that you try and rule out alternative explanations. Of course you do.
So do you think
I think that's not just science, that's philosophy too. You're always looking at what are the alternative explanations and can we rule them out.
Is there a problem with us believing that the cause of the universe is supernatural?
Say again, sorry?
Is there a problem with me believing, or him believing, that the cause of the universe is supernatural?
I would say the problem with you believing that is that the evidence doesn't support it. It's not an a priori problem, that there cannot be a supernatural.
Do you accept, according to your definition of the term supernatural, that whatever causes universe is beyond the realms of any science we know, any natural law we know?
Depends what you mean by universe.
This universe.
Well, okay, so let's imagine...
all that exists.
Okay, so if you define a universe as everything that exists, it cannot have a cause, right? Because by definition, if it exists, it's in the universe, so it can't have an external cause.
So you say the universe has always existed?
I'm not saying that. That might be true.
No. This is
may or
why
may not be true.
Now we're getting to the crux of why we called it "Don't Know Where the Gaps," because we asked you question after question after question, and all we got was "Don't know."
No, there are plenty of things.
And we don't mind. Listen to me. We don't mind your Phil. We don't mind your don't knows. But if you don't know, you can't say we're wrong because you don't know.
Right. Hang on. Darren, let me respond to that. This is important. This is really a crux matter. Okay. Okay. So the point about don't know is we do actually know a lot of things. Okay. We do know.
On that particular debate, you must have said don't know to 10 questions.
Okay. Because in those cases we don't know, right? There are plenty of things we do know. So it's not that you were like you caricatured it. Now, Darren, let me finish. Please let me finish. Right? You caricatured it like you don't know anything. We know a lot in science. We know a lot. Okay. Now, for the question of what was the cause of the Big Bang, that we don't know. Okay. Now, you want to say you know the cause, right? You want to say God did it.
No, I didn't.
Okay. Are you not telling me God did it?
I didn't say that.
Well, what are you saying about the cause of the universe?
The cause of the universe has to be supernatural.
Okay, right. So what I'm saying is that where we don't know, we shouldn't replace don't know with God. No, that is God of the gaps.
I use your definition.
Right? And now you're saying with don't know of the gaps, you're essentially saying you shouldn't replace don't know with don't know.
Okay, but I'll tell you what I say.
That doesn't make sense.
Well, I'll tell you what does make sense.
Of course, if you don't know, you don't know.
I'll tell you what does know. I'll tell you what does make sense.
Okay.
If I believe the cause of the universe is uncaused, that's supernatural.
Not necessarily. What if the universe is eternal into the past? Then it has an endless series of causes going back forever.
They can't.
Why can't it?
So that's infinite regression, isn't it?
So, what's wrong with that?
So how do you solve that problem?
What problem?
You don't think there's a problem with infinite regression?
Mathematicians are perfectly happy with infinities. They're perfectly well defined. So what's the problem?
So you explain what you're saying to me. So you're saying the universe, cause of the universe, couldn't cause the universe until it was caused, yeah?
I'm saying there could be...
No. Well, let's use your example, infinite regression.
Yeah.
So the universe was caused, and its cause had to be caused. And therefore, until it was caused, it couldn't cause the universe. Would you agree?
No, what I'm saying is...
No.
Well, I don't think that's a perfectly... I would like to explain my position rather than have you explain.
I would rather you do that.
Okay. Right. There could be... It's perfectly conceivable, and there's enormous amounts of cosmologists...
Well, use the model of an infinite
universe that is eternal into the past. There's no logical contradiction there, right?
So you're saying the universe has always existed?
It may have. I'm not saying it did. It may have.
Why do you believe that?
Why do I believe it might have? Because there's no reason to rule it out. What would be the reason to rule it out?
So you don't believe it began to exist, the universe?
Again, you're misunderstanding me. It may or may not have, but there's no reason to rule out an eternal universe.
Okay. I accept, if you don't believe the universe began to exist 13.4 billion years ago, Yeah, you're right. Fine. Believe what you like.
Virtually no one in cosmology.
So you've got no reason to believe that. You just think there's no reason not to believe it.
Well, where we have evidence, we should have strong belief. Okay? Where we have a lot of evidence, we have strong belief.
So have you got evidence for an eternal universe?
No, I'm not claiming it is eternal. What I'm saying is nobody knows whether it's eternal or not, and therefore an argument for God that assumes that it isn't eternal is not a valid argument.
Do you believe it's eternal?
No.
Do you believe it had a beginning?
No.
So it's not.
We're back to this again, Darren. You're failing to understand.
I'm trying to understand. Yes.
Okay.
You're right. I am failing to understand.
Okay. So let me try and explain it.
So I just said, do you believe it was eternal? You said no. I said, do you believe it had a beginning? And you said no.
Right.
So now I'm confused.
Okay. So let me try and help clear up your confusion. Okay. Let's suppose that we want to know, it's that guy's...
Just talk about the universe.
That police.
Talk about the universe.
All right, fine. Okay. Right. We can ask questions about certain facts, okay?
I want you to answer what I just said to you. I asked you two questions. And there's only...
I can't give a belief for either option because at the moment we don't know. We don't have any evidence either way.
All right. Well, you did answer definitively. You said no, twice.
No.
Yes, you did.
I said no to I don't believe.
No. Yeah, right, you don't believe.
That doesn't mean that I think the opposite is true.
No.
You're failing to understand this important difference.
So you're saying you're not taking a position?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Okay.
You get it, right?
Oh, so
Darren doesn't get it.
So you don't believe the universe?
Sorry, I forgot your name. Imran gets it. Darren
so he doesn't get it.
Yeah. Right? There's a clear difference.
So you don't believe the universe had a beginning, and nor do you believe it's eternal?
Correct. I think we don't know. It could be either. I'm perfectly happy to entertain either option, but if there's no evidence either way...
Is that based upon lack of physical evidence, or you think there are logical contradictions to holding the belief of either side?
No. I think either are perfectly logically consistent.
Okay.
Right? There's no logical reason to prefer one or the other, and there's no observations that can tell us.
What does the evidence point towards?
Neither. What? What evidence are you talking about?
There's no answer.
I thought Big Bang, redshift, or
right. Okay. Let me try and clear that up for you because that's another area of confusion. Okay.
I didn't make a claim. I just said I've heard scientists use these examples to say the universe had a Big Bang.
All right. Yeah. Okay. So that's a mistake. That's a confusion. Let me try and clear up the confusion for you, okay? We definitely have overwhelming evidence that there was a Big Bang, okay? That we're all agreed on. The redshift, all these things show there was a Big Bang. No one is disputing them, okay? The question is, was the Big Bang actually the beginning? Or was it just a transition from some prior state? Now, the reason to associate the Big Bang with the beginning is because there are theorems proven by Roger Penrose and Stephen Hawking. They're called Penrose-Hawking singularity theorems, and they show that the expanding universe must have a singularity, okay, at its pass. In a finite amount of time, the density, the pressure, the curvature, the temperature all go to infinity, okay, and then you can't continue the evolution of the universe beyond that. So we say the universe began at the Big Bang singularity. However, the singularity theorems that Penrose and Hawking showed, right, have assumptions in them, okay? One of the assumptions is that gravity is always attractive, okay? Now, what we found in 1998 was that the universe is accelerating in its expansion. And what that means is there's a violation of what are called the energy condition assumptions, which is basically saying gravity is always attractive, of the Penrose-Hawking theorems. So we found that although it seemed like a reasonable assumption, gravity is always attractive, it turned out that the assumption is not correct. We also have some evidence that there was something called inflation in the early universe. That's also gravitational repulsion. So that violates the condition of the Penrose-Hawking theorems. And Penrose and Hawking, both of them, have said, and I've interviewed both of them, and they both agree that the Penrose-Hawking theorems do not apply to the universe because the assumptions that they have are questionable. There's another more important assumption in these theorems, and this applies to other theorems as well. There's one quoted, but they go through the lake and have one, and so on. And that is that general relativity describes the evolution of the universe all the way back to the singularity. And there's a problem with that. The problem is that there's another theory we have to describe physics, which is called quantum mechanics. So general relativity is a theorem you use to describe big structures in the universe. Quantum mechanics is a theorem you need to describe small structures. But if we follow the logic of the Big Bang theory, the entire observable universe was then smaller smaller than an atom, okay? Way smaller, right? Then we need to introduce quantum mechanics. And the problem is quantum mechanics and relativity contradict each other. They literally contradict each other, okay? So, therefore, most physicists think that these Penrose-Hawking theorems, and Penrose and Hawking themselves say this, don't apply to the universe. And therefore it is wrong to associate the Big Bang with the beginning of the universe. Okay? Does that clear that up?
Yeah, no, not saying.
Okay.
No, so, sorry, I just want to clarify something.
Yeah.
So if you have these theories that have been developed that are in their fundamentals contradictory, and also there are other things as well as miscalculating the amount of dark matter and energy in the universe by a huge factor.
But that, I think, it doesn't matter to those theories.
Okay.
You can change the matter content in the universe, that won't make any difference.
So what I'm understanding is these are all mathematical models of the universe.
Yeah, that's correct.
And as we're developing these, we're thinking of ways in which we can naturally explain a past, an infinite past.
Yeah.
But that leads itself to a problem. For me, as a non-atheist, it leads to me the issue still is you're still talking about a series of events that go on indefinitely into the past. Yeah. And the question always comes, is the classic question is, how do you cross an infinite series of past events? So in the models that you have that do allow for an infinite past, how is that explained?
So let me try, there's a number of explanations for that. Okay. So one explanation is that the universe, in order to say you can't traverse an infinite period of time, you have to assume that the universe is on a journey. Okay? So for example, I can't cross an infinite space, okay? Because I don't live forever, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I cannot do it. A finite being cannot do that.
Yeah.
Okay? So imagine like I have a race, okay? And I say, right, start the race after I shoot the gun, but wait till I count to infinity first, then start the race.
Yeah.
Of course, we're never going to start the race, of course, right? However, this argument assumes that there's a beginning that's infinitely far away. Right? But in fact, in these models, there is no beginning. And the universe is not on a journey. This argument relies on time being like how we understand it at a layman's level. But we understand in relativity that there is no universal notion of now. So the universe doesn't have to get to now, because there is no now for it to get to. Okay? So this argument, and Bill Craig, who has put forward this argument about you can't have an infinite past, he accepts that this argument relies on effectively denying the basic tenets of relativity. Yeah?
How so? What's the...
In that he has to assume that there is a preferred frame. Okay, a definite, in layman's terms, a definite now that exists. Okay, but in relativity, the standard understanding of relativity is that there is no universal now that the universe has to get to, and therefore this argument does not work.
So what?
Unless the universe had a beginning.
Well, of course, if it had a beginning, it had a beginning, right? But if you can't infer that it must have had a beginning using this line of argument.
No, but what I can do is this, you see. I can do it the other way around.
Okay.
According to what I believe, the universe had a beginning.
Yeah, you're entitled to believe whatever you like.
Then I can ask the question, is my belief the universe have a beginning unscientific?
Well, what we could ask is it backed by evidence and reason?
No. Do you have evidence against it? Do you have evidence against it?
Well, if I don't have evidence against it, that doesn't mean it's true, does it?
No, but it doesn't mean it's false either.
I don't have evidence that you're not a time traveller, right? You could be.
No.
But that doesn't mean I have to take the claim seriously, does it?
You see, here's what we're trying to establish here.
Yeah.
And I don't think people get this, and I think they need to get it. We don't care what you believe, in reality. We care.
Because actually, you have no position. So,
yeah, exactly. You've got nothing really. So we have our beliefs, isn't it?
Yeah.
And so we're here to allow you to challenge what we believe. Right? So our beliefs require a universe beginning. Yeah? Requires it. Now, if you could prove to us the universe could have had a beginning, you have grounds now to start challenging our beliefs. But you don't.
Okay, so let me respond to that.
No. And so what I'm saying to you is, I believe that the Quran is from a supernatural source,
Right.
and I believe that the cause of the universe is supernatural.
Okay.
Yeah? You can't say it's not supernatural because you don't know.
Okay.
And we're happy with that.
Okay.
And you can go on your way, and you can continue with your models and your predictions and conjecture and all of these things.
Can I make a response to that? Okay. So that's fine. I totally agree with what you said. All right.
Alhamdulillah.
All right. Okay. But if you make the argument that from science we can or reason that we can deduce there was a beginning, and therefore you have evidence for your belief and a rational basis for your belief, right? Then I can argue with that. I can say that's mistaken. Okay, that's false reasoning, and you should be criticised for making that kind of argument.
So you've just said there's no now. There is no now.
There's no universal now.
So
no now that you can say is the universe is now. I have a now. You have a now.
Sure, I understand.
Right.
So are you then saying that everything that exists simultaneously at all times?
No.
What are you saying?
It means
because I don't understand that concept.
Okay. So what I would suggest is, you can watch videos, read books on relativity, and there's a concept of relativity that's very important to this whole issue. It's called the relativity of simultaneity. Okay. What it says is that no two observers can agree on what is now. Okay. You can say this event. So if I let's suppose I put my glass of water on your cup, okay, and then I take it off, right? Now you say there's a sequence of events, and we are going to agree because we're in the same frame of reference on what the sequence of events was. What relativity says is that a different moving observer can disagree as to what the sequence of events was. So that's what we call the relativity of simultaneity. The classic experiment is
the train and the sound.
The train, right? So if you're on a platform, you see two lightning strikes go next to you, right? You're standing still, so you say those two events were simultaneous. But if you're on a moving train, you say no, the one in front of me happened first. So the question is which one is right? And relativity says there is no right. They're right in their frame of reference. You're right in your. It doesn't mean there's no time. It doesn't mean everything happens simultaneously. It's not saying there's no time. It's saying that there's no unique now that we can ascribe to the.
So the issue that I take with that is it is perception that you're describing as being the arbiter of what now is. I accept that. But that doesn't take human beings away. There is no perceptor of any event. Yeah. Is there a now in that scenario?
No, I say no. The notion of time is independent of whether there are humans perceiving it. Okay? These, you can have clocks in particles, like radioactive particles are clocks, and this will apply to them where there's no people watching. Okay? Now, and in fact, there's another way to think about this. When we interviewed Sir Roger Penrose, we asked him this very question: how can it be? His model of the universe is that it's eternal into the past, right? And I said, how can it be that it's eternal into the past? And he said, well, for a massless particle, they don't feel the ticking of time, right? So to them, a day, a week, a month, a year, there are some years.
There are some people who they do.
Okay. So to them, they were talking what's called a conformal manifold. There is really no passage of time for them. Okay. There's still a space-time structure, but there isn't a passage of time. Right? Not normal time.
Very, very intelligent stuff. What's your point?
The point is, Darren, let me make it again. The point is that there are many Muslims, and Christians that say that you can infer the existence of God from, or that the beginning of the universe supports God. That Big Bang cosmology, and you did raise Big Bang cosmology.
I asked. No.
Okay, fine. If not you, many Muslims.
No, what I'm saying is, what I said was this. I'm going to misquote. And second thing, don't straw man me with other people's arguments. I'd appreciate.
How am I straw manning?
Because you're responding to their arguments. But I didn't say.
But you did raise Big Bang cosmology.
The only reason I raised raised Big Bang cosmology
What was the
to
reason?
say that some scientists believe the universe had a beginning because of this.
Right.
Scientists claim.
Okay.
Right.
So if that's true, that supports
No.
your argument,
But
right?
listen, me personally, have I come here telling you science supports?
Sorry, I've got one question. So,
Go ahead.
so you're
I'm
saying
trying to
that
understand the point. That's it.
if you're massless, there's no time. So was there a time when the universe was massless?
Quite possibly, yes.
When was that?
At the Big Bang.
Because didn't the mass become infinite to that time?
That's space-time curvature in the singularity theorem.
Yeah.
Okay, but if the temperatures were too hot for mass to form, which is what Roger Penrose argues, I'm not saying it's right, but that's certainly a respectable view, then there isn't any mass at that point in time.
So the question, the intuitive question, maybe I'm wrong with this. How does temperature have any effect without there being mass? How can you have a temperature?
Because particles break apart, right, at high temperatures. Okay, that's how you can break particles apart.
I understand temperature to be the transfer of energy between particles.
It's how that parts they're moving.
So if their mass is infinite, then obviously time is acting on them because only massless particles are safe.
Okay. So it's not that their mass is infinite; it's a space-time curvature is infinite. Okay, because the density is infinite, right? Now, what would happen? Now, that's what happens in the singularity theorem. If there's no mass in the universe, then in fact there is no singularity. So there is no infinite density.
That's another theory.
No infinite
That's another theory you're bringing.
Well, it's one possibility. Yeah.
So this is now where we had the same problem before. Was you can bring another theory that has another idea, but what we're not getting any cohesive understanding.
Correct. And therefore, any argument that is advanced using knowledge that we don't have is a bad argument.
So this,
So I'm not saying because of this, with things we don't know, Islam is false. I'm not saying that. Right? What I'm saying is that this particular argument that has been used.
Yeah, but that's where I said the straw man is, because I didn't advance that argument.
Okay, fine. Not you, but many Muslims advance this argument, and you can't deny that.
I have,
right? Well,
that's okay. Yeah, some people do.
Okay, many Muslims do. So let's agree that they
there are many
wrong.
atheists who believe that naturalism is the premise of science.
Okay, I know.
And there are many atheists who believe the universe had a beginning 30.4 billion years ago.
13.8, by the way. Okay. Although there is some different.
Yeah. No, but what I'm saying is this. But I would never.
So can we agree? Okay. Then let's get some common ground between us. I agree, right, that I don't think naturalism is the basis of science.
Alhamdulillah.
Okay. I think observation and theory testing is how science is done, right? And can we agree that an argument based on Big Bang cosmology is a bad argument for God? Can we agree with that?
Well, I've never presented that argument.
I'm not saying you did. Can we agree it's a bad argument? Your fellow Muslims that do advance that argument, can we agree that that's a bad argument?
I will say this. I will do it the other way around. I will believe, an evidence for me to believe in the idea of a universe having a beginning is in the Quran.
Okay, but can we agree that science does not support that argument?
It doesn't. It doesn't
support it. Doesn't oppose it.
Okay, great. Then we're in agreement.
Yeah,
that's good. We can have the discussion. We can have common ground because and the Muslims that say that science supports
as long as I
it
leave him,
are
I
wrong.
believe rock solid. I don't.
But the Muslims that say it's supported by modern science, they're wrong.
But on the other hand,
can we agree with that?
What's that? With a caveat.
Hang on, one sec. Can we agree that the Muslims that say that science supports that claim, they are wrong?
Based on uncertainty, we can't.
Isn't it? But are there some scientists
what does it depend on then?
Are there scientists that make that claim?
I would say most cosmologists no longer associate Big Bang with the beginning.
If that Muslim has read a scientist who's made that claim, then what's the problem?
Well, of course, you can always find a scientist to support pretty much any claim. The question is, what is the consensus of the community, right? And what is the nature of the evidence? If we have a theorem that's backed up by evidence, and then we get new evidence that overturns it, then we have to change our minds. And what's happened is that has been the case. The scientific community has really changed their mind on this thing. And then what's happened is you get these Muslims, not just Muslims, Christians do it as well.
You know what it is?
And they keep quoting this outdated science.
Phil, I've seen the caliber of Muslims you've been speaking to.
No, but just to rather than
Hamzom sources, what do you think of him? He's made this argument. What do you think of him?
When?
Oh, go and look up his arguments on YouTube.
No, he has.
Well, I don't know the date off the top of my head. Go and look up his debates with atheists. He makes this argument every time.
So let me give you a different position. So
okay.
what we've discussed is there's an idea of trying to get rid of time, because that would be the thing that would get in the way of an infinite past. And we talk about everything.
Well, it's a conventional notion of time.
Sure.
It's not actually getting rid of time.
Sure, I understand
It's our
time acts on mass.
It's our layman's understanding of time.
So
Shabir Ali, he makes this argument as well. What do you think of him?
Great guy.
Okay, he makes this exact same argument. So you must agree with me then that he's making false arguments.
I haven't heard him make the argument and how he's made the argument.
Okay, go and look at any debate he's done with an atheist. He makes this argument.
I don't think that you've presented anything, for me personally, that counters that concept.
Why not?
And I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why. So we talked about first of all removing the now, because you said that this was perceptual. Then I removed universal now.
Yeah.
Sure. And you said this is because of perceptions, and you gave the example of the train and the lightning strikes. So then I removed perception out of the equation. So this is the same as if a tree falls down in a forest, there's no one to listen to. Can you hear the sound? Is there a sound? And this is the sort of realms we're in now, a little bit sort of skirting shaky ground, right? And then you said that the events would still be real, and in a deterministic way, the way that sort of conventionally science understands how or physics understands the universe. Everything is sort of what's happening at this moment is directly related to the a small fraction of time before, and everything, because the particles are moving, the outcome's determined. And we take that backwards, and then we have the observations that you spoke about, redshift and background microwave radiation, etc., that leads to a singularity where the conventional understanding is that mass becomes infinite. So time
no, it's not that mass becomes infinite.
Sure, mass and
the density
becomes infinite. Sure,
curvature becomes
sure. So at that stage, where actually the time will still be acting, you've brought another theory which actually is contradictory, that says actually if you get rid of mass,
hey, I haven't heard back from them. I need to know because it's like a month away.
I did forward your email.
Can you give me their email and then we can?
Okay, yeah, I will.
Okay, fine. Sorry.
That's right. No worries. Assalamu alaikum. How are you? Okay. So if you get rid of mass, then you can essentially or reduce mass to such a level that time itself doesn't really come into the equation. And I think that's just a cop-out. That's what I think. No offence, because you're just finding another theory that could somehow maybe take away this notion that we have to deal with an infinite series of past events. So for me, I think that's still as a logical to looking at the universe in a logical way, and causality as we conventionally understand it. I think that's the Kalam cosmological argument is a reasonable argument, and I haven't really seen any defeaters personally to that argument.